Hey everyone, today I'm back in Lost Ark as we got a pretty sizable patch yesterday that introduced a lot of good stuff, and amongst the many things that we got, a balance patch was one of them. And in said balance patch, a few classes got some small tweaks or even reworks, and Arcanist just so happened to be one of the classes that got a slight rework. Now today I'm mainly going to be talking about the Empress Arcanist because I don't really play Emperor that much outside of my Chaos dungeons, but I'll still cover the general changes that have happened, and I'll also go over the new build that I'm currently playing, which you can see in action in the background gameplay. This was my first time actually playing the new build in some actual content that wasn't Trixion, so I was still getting used to it, but the content that I did after Clown I didn't end up keeping the footage for because it was mostly scuffed footage of me disconnecting and such, because the servers are anything but stable at the moment. So hopefully they can get that sorted out sooner rather than later, but I'm sure that the gameplay in the background will serve just fine as an example of what the new build looks like. So what ended up happening to Arcanist? We got a new skill, Dealer's Flip, and this one is replacing the old Infinity Shower. Pretty much all of the quick draw tripods have been nerfed, so these are the tripods that will allow you to instantly draw a card, but to make up for these nerfs, red skills can now generate Identity Gauge, and yes, wealth runes do work on these now. And then there are a fair amount of other minor tripod changes that I'm not all going to go over. The ones that affect the new build though are going to be changes to Call of Destiny and 4 of a Kind. So Call of Destiny, being a normal skill, was hit with the quick draw nerf, and the card draw was kind of the only reason as to why it was in our build in the first place. Now on the same line as we have our quick draw tripod, we also have a crit damage tripod. So this can be a second source of a crit damage buff. Now together with that, because we don't care about the skill hitting twice anymore, we can change our third tripod to also a new tripod that was added this patch, which turned this skill into a stacking skill, aka a blue skill, and this will grant us 2 card stacks. So this has a fairly big effect on your rotation. You now have a second crit damage source and you have a 4th stacking skill. Another important skill change is 4 of a Kind. The third tripod here has been changed to give the skill crit rate, just like we have a crit rate tripod for Celestial Rain and Secret Garden. Now this is kind of big because it turns the skill that felt kind of garbage to use before into a really good replacement for Serendipity. The reason why I'm not a big fan of Serendipity is simple. It's not reliable damage. I do admit that I miss the second counter that Serendipity provides, but that's pretty much all that I am missing. The skill was very hit or miss in terms of its damage value. If it crit, it was slightly stronger in Secret Garden. If it didn't crit, then it was pretty shit, and because it doesn't have a crit rate tripod, it didn't crit very often. So that is why 4 of a Kind is a really good replacement for this skill, as it adds another source of consistent damage to your rotation. There is still some RNG, because 4 of a Kind does have some RNG tripods, but you can kind of choose what you want. For me personally, I use the cooldown tripod, because if it does reset a lot, you get to use the skill a whole lot more often, and there is also a tripod that adds a chance to not consume your stacking cards when you use it. Now, I personally decided against using this one, because I went for the guaranteed damage tripod instead, that's on the same line as that one, because there's already so much stuff to keep track of with Arcanist, and I didn't want this to become another thing that I had to pay attention to, but it does open up another build option if you want to go in that direction, and that is the 4 red build. Basically, you either replace Return or Call of Destiny, choice is up to you, with a 4th red skill, and then every time before you go and use a red skill, you use 4 of a Kind and then you combo that into whatever red skill you were planning on using. So for example, you get your 4 stacks, you get your crit damage buff from either Return or Call of Destiny, and then you use 4 of a Kind into Celestial Rain, for example. And then you're basically gambling on the fact that 4 of a Kind would not consume the card stacks. A little bit too gambly for me, so I decided to stick fairly close to the old reliable Empress build, but it is an option if you want to go that route. Lastly, I guess we should talk about our cards, because we also got some changes there. So first of all, they changed the draw probability of a few cards. Cull, Balance, Judgment and Wheel of Fortune have increased draw chances now, and pretty much all of the other cards have decreased draw chances. So this makes it so that we will be drawing more impactful cards more often, and I can notice the difference if I'm being honest. The Ghost card got slightly changed, it just gives movement speed now and not damage reduction for like the first 3 hits that you take or something, but the more important changes are to the Star and the Moon card. Basically, their effects have now been spread over 3 cards instead of just 2. So Moon now only gives cooldown reduction, the mana aspect is gone. Star now refunds 50% mana instead of 100, but it now adds an extra mana regen buff that lasts for 20 seconds. And then we have a new card called Joy, which will decrease your active cooldowns by 15% with a 50% chance to reduce them by 30%. So TLDR, Moon gives cooldown reduction, Star gives mana, and Joy gives you that active cooldown reduction. That's not all though, we also have another new card, which is the Clown card, and this one will turn into the last card that you used. So say for example, you play a Cull, you then play a Clown card, you now have another Cull card in your hand to be used when you want it. So it doesn't automatically play it when you use the Clown card, it just gets one into your hand. For Emperor, we also have two new cards that will be replacing the Balance and Judgment cards when the engraving is active, because those two cards are fairly useless when you play Emperor. Chancellor will give you crit rate to your normal skills for 10 seconds, and Royal will give you 50% damage buff to your normal skills for 4 seconds. Yes, I know the name is confusing, we have two Royal cards now, the one that allows you to pull 2 cards out of your deck when you use it, and then this new one. So those are pretty much the important changes, but how does this affect our Empress build? Well, first of all, I'm using the new Dealer's Flip skill because of the movement speed tripod that it has. So if you pair that together with the movement speed that you can get from Scratch Dealer and Spiral Edge, we can have a 100% uptime on maximum movement speed if we are playing together with a Yearning support. So this opens up Raid Captain as a really strong engraving, and now that we can use Raid Captain, it's also a very easy replacement for Barricade, which then opens up the use of other runes on our red skills. I'm personally running Wealth runes right now, but you could use things like Quick Recharge or Rage runes, or even Overwhelm runes, because Arcanist Stagger is pretty bad. You don't need to do this though. If you already have a Barricade build going and you don't want to reinvest just to change one engraving, then there's no need to do that. It's just another option that you can choose from. 4 of a Kind replacing Serendipity adds more consistent damage into your rotation and some added RNG if you want to go that route. You can take the weak point tripod if you really want no RNG, but I personally enjoy the resets that can occur, and since you need to stack up cards between usages anyways, I don't really feel like it requires too much attention to check if the resets are happening or not. And then you also have the added benefit of it having the potential to go kind of wild during a Judgment window, because during Judgment you can spam away at your red spells, so the more resets that you get on 4 of a Kind, the better. And then Call of Destiny becoming a 4th stacking skill adds more reliability into your rotation as well. Sometimes I have it that I miss one of my stacking skills, and usually that halts the flow of the rotation quite a bit. Now having an extra skill to fall back on feels great, and it's serving as an extra crit damage buff feels even better, because if you play it right, you can have a crit damage buff ready for all of your red skills. So to sum things up, the new Arcanist is a fair bit stronger than her old self. She pretty much went from being a mediocre DPS that struggled to get MVP to now being on top of the list more often than not, and the new skills and tripods open up new build options if you want to change things up a little bit. The new build that I'm running right now is the most fun that I've had with the class so far, and I'm looking forward to getting better at playing it as well, because I definitely still need a fair bit of practice to fully feel comfortable on it. But it's been really fun so far, and I can definitely recommend everyone to at least give it a try. It's still a complicated class to play, but at least now you're actually getting rewarded for all the effort that you put in, whereas before that wasn't really the case. And that is pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about, so I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.